Praise the Lord. Today I want to speak about the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. In Luke chapter 16, Jesus shares about two parables. The first parable is about the unjust steward, and the second parable is about the rich man and Lazarus. Both these parables, Jesus is teaching to his disciples, even as the Pharisees were hearing Jesus. In Luke chapter 16, verse 14, it says, "Now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, also heard all these things, and they derided him." The Pharisees were lovers of money, and the Pharisees had surrounded Jesus. And Jesus is sharing both these parables to both these groups. He wanted his disciples to know about how to use money. At the same time, Jesus wanted to give a strong message to the Pharisees concerning the love of money. So in the first parable, Jesus speaks about the unjust steward. So Jesus says about this steward who is unjust, who takes all his resources, who takes all his account books and does all the forgery to help other people. And the message that Jesus brings about is that, look at that unjust steward. He is the son of this evil generation, but he knows how to use money to make friends. He knows that his money will not be with him after his master takes him away from his post. So he uses his money and his resources to get friends. So the message that Jesus gives is this, that look at that unjust steward and learn from him. You are the son of God. You are the children of God. You must know how to use money. Money is a gift that is given by God. Do not love money. You cannot love money and you cannot love God. You cannot love both at the same time. So Jesus says and teaches that use money. It is something entrusted upon you by God. Use money. Share it with others so that you will have friends and you will have treasure in heaven. Let not your heart be upon money. That's the basic point that Jesus wanted to teach from this first parable of the unjust steward. Now coming to the second parable of the rich man and Lazarus. In this parable, Jesus speaks about this rich man. Now, he is a person who lived in luxury. He had the best apparel, the best clothings, all branded, and he had the best meals. Everything was very cozy and comfortable for him. But Lazarus, he lived a terrible life. He lived a pathetic life. His body was filled with sores, and he desired for the breadcrumbs that could fall from the table of the rich man. And finally, Jesus in the parable says that the rich man ends up in hell, but Lazarus receives a good welcome in heaven, and he is seated at the bosom of Father Abraham. Now, why did the rich man end up in hell, and why did Lazarus end up at the bosom of Abraham? Now, if you look at the end of the parable, you can understand the reason. The rich man ended up in hell because this man Lazarus was laid at the gate of the rich man. It says there, he had the opportunity, he had every available opportunity to help Lazarus, but he did not help. And if you look at the end of the parable, you can understand. Jesus says, when the rich man says that, Father Abraham, send Lazarus to warn my brothers so that they would repent, they would not end up in my position. So then Father Abraham says, they have Moses and the prophets to warn them. So the law of Moses and prophet had clear teachings about sharing the goods with the poor, sharing the goods with the needy. And the rich man clearly understood that he missed it. He missed that opportunities. He loved money so much. He loved his comfort so much that he could not care to help the poor man. He never cared about Lazarus. He knew that he had missed the opportunities. He knew that he had sinned. He knew that he had broken the law of Moses and the commands of the prophets. So he says, at least send Lazarus to my brothers so that they would repent and they would not come in this position. So the rich man ends up in hell just because he did not use his resources. He did not use the riches entrusted by God upon him in a good way, even when he had the opportunities, even when there was Lazarus at his very gate, something he could never avoid, but he overlooked it because he loved money. So what is the basic point that Jesus is teaching? Jesus is teaching that money and riches God gives, but it is always a gift of God. It is entrusted upon us to be used, to be shared with the people in need. And if we are not doing it, we are liable to be judged. That is a basic idea that Jesus wants to give in this parable. And the basic thing that Jesus wants to give is that we need to check, do we love money? Whether we have the love of money, whether we love money as much that we do not care for our brothers and sisters who are in need. God gives us opportunities and we need to use the money and resources in order to win friends, in order to build others. That is the purpose. The Pharisees, they loved money. They saw money and riches as a sign of God's blessing. That is something which our generation is also taking as God's teachings. Many of the people, they see money and riches as the greatest blessing of God, as a sign of God's blessing. Yes, money is something that God gives, but it is something which God gives for us to be stewards of. God entrusts upon us that resource so that we would use it, we would share it. That is the basic teaching that Jesus teaches from these two parables. And may God help us to use our resources and money for the furtherance of God's kingdom and to share with others and to be rich in good works. By that, we will be able to make treasures for ourselves, a treasure with no insects and no moths, and nothing can destroy. And we can live a life of victory. God bless you.